Hey friends, I'm Greg Nettle, and this is the Church Planting Podcast. I serve as president of Stadia Church Planting, where we believe that every person on the planet deserves access to a thriving, growing, multiplying church. Today on the Church Planting Podcast, we're going to be talking with a very lifelong friend of mine. His name is Brett White. I had met Brett years ago when I served as his pastor at River Tree Christian Church, and it was fun for me to get to talk with Brett about marketing and the church, marketing and God's kingdom. I finished the recording and I said to my wife, man, Brett is absolutely amazing at what he does. Today, he is the vice president of Sherwin Williams Paint, which so many of you have used. He is over all of their marketing for the entire company, an amazing feat for such a young man. Brett is going to be talking with us about how marketing can benefit the church and how we as leaders need to be thinking about how we can get the good news of Jesus Christ out to as many people as possible in the most effective way possible. Let's jump right in with Brett White. All right, I'm here with my good friend, Brett White. We've been friends now for, at least a couple decades, Brett, and we've worked together in local church settings as well as in Stadia Church Planting. Thank you so much for joining the Church Planting Podcast.
No, thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So, Brett, you have a long history in marketing. I've watched you in your career and how you've grown up in that career. In fact, I'm reading off, your bio sheet. Brett White is a senior sales and marketing executive with a proven track record of growing billion-dollar brands such as Sherwin Williams, Stouffer's, and Tide. And those are brands that I think almost all of us use, and you're kind of one of the genius behind that. Hey, so tell us what you're doing right now. What's your vocation?
So I am Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Sherwin Williams stores. So all the 4,500 Sherwin Williams stores across North America, and then we've got another 1,500 across Canada and Latin America as well.
And tell us, what exactly does that mean? What exactly do you oversee in that role?
Sure. I think of being responsible. It's really being responsible for demand generation for Sherwin Williams, and I kind of think of it as a three-legged stool is how we look at it. The first part of it is you have to understand your customer. You've got to understand them at a deep level and have insight into them, so that you can build plans that really connect and resonate with them. And so that's always the first part, is customer insight. Research, time in the field, visiting with customers, visiting with our sales representatives that are dealing with our customers every day. And once you get that understanding, then you can start to develop strategies to help better meet our customer needs. And so that's the kind of the second leg then, is building these strategic plans that address needs, wants, desires of our customer. And then once we build those plans, then the third leg is executing those plans. And so that's, and that's where people tend to think of marketing, is in that execution phase, which is, TV advertising, fun, exciting stuff like that. But really, that's just 1/3 of really what marketing is about.
Okay, so we could unpack this for several hours, but you used a term there that I don't want to miss. You said you work with demand generation. Mm-hmm. Tell us what that means.
I mean, in the context of Sherwin Williams and most businesses, it means driving sales, like getting people to buy our product, buy paint and other.
Okay, so products. Let's talk about it in the church context. Demand generation would be helping people to even know that they need Jesus. Would that be an equivalent?
Yeah, it would be awareness of Jesus, awareness of the church, awareness of what having a relationship with Jesus, what having a partnership or being involved in the church can mean to you and to your life. It'd be driving awareness of that and so I'll use another marketing term. It's a common, the marketing funnel. And so it starts with awareness, then it goes into consideration, then it goes into trial, and then it goes into loyalty, essentially. And so we're always trying to move people through that funnel.
And so that's a brilliant way for us to think about people coming to Jesus, right? Because awareness and understanding, trial and loyalty. I mean, that's the exact steps to someone becoming a disciple for Jesus. You said the first leg of the stool is understanding the customer, and I'm thinking about this in terms of our church planters right now that are listening to this, Brett. How does that translate? So I'm getting ready to go launch a church in Cleveland, Ohio, which you're very familiar with because that's the home base of Sherwin Williams. What would you say to a church planter, which we have several now launching in Cleveland? What would you say to them about understanding the customer?
Yeah, usually the way I would start with something like that is I would look at what I would call like quantitative data, empirical hard data to start with. So that would be looking at demographic trends for the area, looking at where people are moving, where people are leaving from, going to, looking at what their income trends are, different socioeconomic factors to get an understanding at a high level, because that might give you an indication of where some needs are. And then you've got to go talk to people. And, if you have the resources, we would do, we would start typically in something like that. We would do focus groups, and we would, identify an area we thought showed some interest of need. And we'd bring a small group of people in and talk to them and try and get the data only tells you so much. It doesn't tell you the why. It just tells you the what. So try to get an understanding of the why. And then from there, we would go and we'd survey. We'd get the understanding of the why, and we get make some hypothesis of what we think is driving this, what are the needs that we can help meet, and then we would do a survey of that specific area to validate that. I mean, those are the steps if you've got the resources to do, but you could do that on a much more scaled down version as well.
Okay, so there's demographics which have been around for a long time, or in the early days of River Tree, where I was pastor, and you are part of River Tree. We used a lot of demographics, but the new trend now is psychographics. And how much does Sherwin Williams do you guys get into psychographics at all?
Yeah, psychographics we just refer to as attitudes. It's customer attitudes. It's what is their worldview, and then specifically to whatever category, whatever type of product that you're going to communicate with them on. What is their attitude towards that category, that product?
Yeah, so just to let everyone know, our listeners know, Stadia now has demographics and psychographics available throughout the United States that you can tap into when you partner with Stadia, and it's one of the things we offer all of our planters and our partner churches. So it's an amazing amount of resources telling people's proclivity, how they feel towards certain things, their likelihood of what's coming in the next 6 months to a year in that specific community. And so some really incredible things. So you get to know the customer, Brent. In the field is always the best, right? You're meeting at Starbucks, or you've got these focus groups. But then you put together a strategy. And I think this is where we as church leaders often kind of miss it. We kind of get to know the people. We kind of know the area fairly well. Talk about strategy and what that means to you.
And the two biggest factors to assess at the beginning of developing a strategy are where the opportunity or gaps are. So what are the needs, the significant needs within the target? And then the other factor is, what is your ability to deliver on those needs? So they could have tremendous needs in an area, but your organization that's not their strength. It's not set up to. And so it wouldn't be the best strategy to focus on those big needs, at least not right away, until you build up capability for that. That can be good long-term vision planning for an organization to figure out, we need to build this capability in order to meet these needs. But in terms of if I'm looking at where I'm going to go next, you need to look for where there's this gap in opportunity, in need, and where your organization, your leadership is well suited to meet that and deliver on that. So that's the basis
Okay.
of it.
Okay, so that's the baseline strategy. And then where do you put, is it the next leg of the stool where you actually kind of put, feet to the legs and, talk about that a little bit, how you move from strategy to execution?
Yeah. So once you identify, this gap or opportunity that you think that you can meet, then you develop strategies to how are we going to do that specifically. And so strategies aren't specific ideas yet. They are more general spaces. There's a lot of different ways to deliver a strategy. So your opportunity. I'll use a paint world example. So we market to a lot of our business at Sherwin Williams. Actually, the majority of it, most people don't know, goes through painting contractors, not actually to homeowners. So we market heavily to residential repaint painters, which are house painters. And so house painters, one of the gaps or opportunities we found is there's a lot of older painters are retiring, get out of the business. There's a lot of newer painters coming in, and they don't know how to run a business yet. And so that's a gap or opportunity that we think we have a lot of expertise in, because we've been working with painters for 150 years. And so that's one of our gap of opportunities. So then the strategy is, all right, we're going to provide them training on business training. And then under that, there's a lot of different ways we can do that, right? We can do short online videos. We can do in-person training. We can do mentoring. Like, there's a bunch of different ways we can provide training. So that's how it kind of cascades down from the opportunity to the strategy to the specific initiatives that you can execute.
Man, I love that. And so much of that translates into church world, Brett, where we identify a need in the community. What's the gap that we can actually fill in that need? And then how are we going to execute that? Excuse me. Okay, let me back up and let's just talk about this. Some pastors might think of marketing as a negative concept when it comes to Jesus and the church. How would you respond to that?
I would respond that Jesus is one of the greatest marketers the world has ever known. And actually, you've given me a lot of my framework on this from some of our early days and early conversations. But if I go back to the three-legged stool that I started with, the first is understanding your customer and your target. And we don't like to think of people in those terms, so you can say that, understanding people in the community. Like, it doesn't, like, those are marketing business terms. You can frame it up in language that's more, palatable for people. Then the next is strategies to reach them. Identifying once you've identified those gaps, what are those strategies to reach them? Well, strategies to reach them is stuff Jesus did all the time. He figured out how, and that's why he was such a game changer in history. He changed the way that people viewed the law and changed the way people viewed religion, and he did that by making it relevant, speaking in parables. That's not how religious leaders of the day used to talk and speak. Well, I would call that marketing. He understood the needs of the people, and he filled those needs in a way that the people could relate to. Because within the strategy, so I was talking specific, like, individual business strategy, but within broader marketing strategy, there's some other principles you have to think of in terms of marketing. One is you've got to drive any awareness of any product, and like in the funnel that we were talking about, or drive awareness of anything, you've got to first engage someone. And so in today's world in particular, but I assume it was not that different. It was different, but not back in biblical times. You've got to break through. How do you get people to pay attention? If there's tons, back in the day, there would have been a lot of religious leaders spouting a lot of different philosophies, and maybe a lot of them the same and very dogmatic. And so how are you going to break through to get people to really listen to you? And so Jesus used parables, I would argue, to break through the clutter, to break through the noise, to get people to really engage and listen at a different way, and to understand what God wants for them and what God can has in store for them, in a different way. And so I would argue that that's all marketing. It's just we classify it differently and talk about it in a business sense today.
Yeah, as I was preparing for our talk on this, I was thinking about it. As far as understanding the customer, Jesus certainly came for all people of the world for all time, but the reality is he came to a Jewish audience. I mean, there was the Roman world going on, there were the Gentiles, and certainly Jesus interacted, but very minimally. It was his audience was the Jewish people that he, would be training and working with and building awareness to. And then, understanding and what are the needs, perform miracles, feeding of the 5,000, all of those different things. And we don't always talk about that in terms of marketing, but it is certainly breaking through with a brand new message. That God is a God of grace, not of law, that I've come, to fulfill the law, not to abolish it. We could go on and on and on and on with Jesus' new product, if you will. And so sometimes we just have to get through the language barrier, if we will, between the business world. Brett, you're a business leader. You've been involved in River Tree heavily with me over the years. You've been involved with Stadia frequently to help us in this realm as well. Talk a little bit about, as a business leader, do you want to be asked to do stuff like that? Is it a pain in the butt when you get called from me? What are your thoughts on that as business leaders, out there in the church?
No, I enjoy it. I get there's kind of a couple factors. One is just personal fulfillment. I've been wired, I believe, by God from a small age to think like this, behave. I remember being a small kid listening to Casey's KSM Top 40 radio countdown and being fascinated like why some songs were more popular than other, and some would get rapidly popular, others would take a while to get popular. Always fascinated by that, fascinated by advertising and how it impacts people. I took a lot of psych classes in college. So I believe I was always kind of wired for this type of work. So I'm passionate and I get excited. So I enjoy taking skills that I've learned and things that I like to do and doing it with the church. And then spiritually, it allows me to use my gifts to make an impact. And so I don't view it as an inconvenience at all.
And so, I love this because it's the way God's wired you. It's your giftings. It's your passion. And if we don't tap into leaders like you, oh my goodness, we're missing huge amounts of what God is gifting the church with simply because we didn't ask, simply because we didn't notice, simply because we didn't take the time to find out, how this all meshes together. Now, let's go back to River Tree, because there was a time when you and I worked together really specifically in saying, okay, this is kind of our customer, and we were able to demographically, you remember this, Team 244, and we recognized demographically that there were 244,000 people who did not have a church home within a 20-mile or 20-minute driving distance of our central campus at the time. Now, so we started this team called Team 244, and it was specifically, how do we reach the 244,000? And for River Tree, that became kind of our big mantra, is we want to reach the 244,000 that are out there. Now, a lot of people listening don't have, you have 20,000 or 2,000, or some of you have 2 million, depending, if you're in a major metropolitan area. Brett, think back about those days. What do you remember fondly? What worked? What was a disaster? What, anything from Team 244 that you think would be relevant today?
Yeah, I think the first thing is it helps bring focus, right? When you have a clear objective and you're then developing clear strategies, it brings focus, because in strategy has been called by some thought leaders as the Ruthless Act of Exclusion. And what that means basically is you got to say no to some stuff. You say yes to a whole lot, but you got to have focus. You got to say no to some stuff. And what strategy, having a clear objective and strategy does, and 244 was all about that, was honing that in so that you could have focus and make the most of your resources.
The Ruthless Act of Exclusion. I'm right. I'm taking notes as we talk because I'm learning from you as we go here. Man, that just hits it on the money. We think about this all the time at Stadia. If we're going to start something new, we're thinking, what do we have to say no to?
It's hard. Even, people think big billion-dollar businesses like Sherwin Williams, we want to say yes to every opportunity. We see opportunities to engage customers and sell more paint at every turn. But if you chase everything and everywhere, you're not maximizing your resources. You need focus on where the biggest opportunities are and where you can have the most impact.
And the word ruthless in there, I kind of underlined that in my notes. How does that play out when we say ruthless?
It's tough, and it's probably not my greatest strength as a marketing person. You have a little bit of creative side and you're an idea, and so you see opportunity everywhere. But the way it plays out is having, you have ideas, you go and vet them out and chase them down, and then you got to be able to you got to then assess. All right, is this really a good use of our resources? And so it's having some hard conversations. I have a particular leader on my team, Jeff Winter, who's really good at this. And Jeff will go down a path and explore what we think maybe collectively is a good idea and do the assessment and come back and say, for this reason, it's probably not the best use of our resources. We should focus on training.
Yeah, and I think for those of us, operating in not-for-profits and church world, this idea of the ruthless act of exclusion becomes really, really important. But, I loved another thing you just said there while you were just speaking. You said, I see opportunities everywhere. And here's the deal. So some of us as church leaders are wired like that. We're going to see opportunities everywhere. But maybe you're not wired like that. And boy, oh boy, here's what I would say. Look for someone in your church or even outside the church at this point who does look at the world that way through that lens of opportunity, and they can expand your horizon and you can lean into them that way. Hey, Brett, what are some of the trends you see in marketing that church leaders should be aware of right now?
Yeah, there's a few things I would say. Obviously this little incident in 2020 happened, global pandemic, and it's changed people, right? It's changed attitudes. So that's the first thing I would say, that like the trends in marketing, again, are not about necessarily some sexy piece of advertising or something. They're about people insights, human insights. And, right now what we're seeing, I actually made some notes, some stuff that we've been working on. There's been a strong need for increase. So these are large quantitative studies that companies like Gallup and all these different survey companies do. And they're seeing significant change in attitudes. And what they're seeing is strong needs for increase in safety, serenity, simplicity, and equality as well. So all of these things are, and they reflect people's insecurities right now that they're feeling, right, with so much kind of turmoil and uncertainty that makes people feel nervous, and so they have a need for those to feel more secure, to feel more calm, to feel like that they've got kind of simplified purpose and focus in their life. And
so this is good news for the church.
I was just going to say that this is, to me, I look at this and I'm like, all right, can a can of paint do this? Well, I might be able to spin some magic and make it, if you paint your room the perfect color and you set the mood and it gives you tranquility and peaceful, I might be able to sell that a little bit. But I look at this and say, well, this is Jesus. Safety, security, even equality is a message that, Jesus, the Good Samaritan, he chose the Samaritan for a reason. That's a great story of equality. So yeah, I think this is absolutely, it's a terrific time for the church.
That's fantastic. Okay, we just have a few more minutes to talk, Brett. 3 questions we're asking every podcast guest. Here's question number 1. What do you wish pastors would do more of?
I wish pastors would do more of making the message of Jesus current and relevant. It plays off of what I just said. There's such a need out there. Address the current issues of the day, and the Bible has so much to say about them. It's not just about finding verses and chapters to go preach on. That's fine too. But start with what are the topics of the day, and then make the Bible relevant to them.
Fantastic. What do you wish pastors would do less of?
Less judging and condemnation. And I don't speak from personal experience that I've seen this, but what I see on TV disturbs me sometimes. Religious leaders condemning large groups of population, condemning people instead of behaviors at times. And even if you're gonna if you want to give the message that this behavior is bad, it needs to come with the message that we love them still. And so less judging and condemning, I think.
Yep, fantastic. And number 3, what has been one thing a pastor has done that has been especially helpful to you?
Well, I'm going to give you and maybe a Rob Bell assist on this, and that is making Jesus relevant every day for me, helping see the Jesus in every day. And Rob Bell talks about it as anything good comes from Jesus. So any joy, any interaction with your child or your spouse, or I'm going to head out to the beach today and admire the beauty of the beach and actually seeing the sun for a change. And that's God. That's Jesus. It's every day, and it doesn't always have to be some big religious concept or something like that. There's God in everything, and that was very, very changing for me.
Hey, Brett, so grateful for your time with us, but I can't leave this episode without asking you to speak into this. Okay, the big deal now in church world, and I think it's all over the world, digital presence. How important is that in Sherwin Williams and the marketing world, and just kind of translate it into church world now?
Yeah. So I would say 2 things about it. One is first, the higher trend above digital presence is customer experience, what we call. And the idea of customer experience is that it used to be people interacted with, and I think this applies to the church as well. They interacted with the church by coming to church on Sunday. Maybe they went to a Bible study or some other event, but there was very limited number of touch points you had with them. Today, you interact with them, on the website when they're going there. Maybe you have an app, you have podcasts like this. You obviously still have your sermons and your events and all this stuff. You interact with them across a wider range of vectors, and so someone has got to be looking at that holistic customer experience and how are they all connected? How do they all deliver a high quality customer experience, if you will? And so that leads into digital, because digital is a huge part of what has exploded those number of touch points, if you will, is the presence of digital. And all things are digital now. It's almost ubiquitous to say, and having a digital presence is absolutely critical for any brand, church, organization that wants to reach people. There are 2 broad platforms for that. One is called owned. We call it owned media, and one is called earned media. And the third is purchased media. So owned media is your website, your your podcast stuff that you control completely. Earned media is social media, and everyone should be there using. It's a tremendous vehicle for reaching any audience. It's highly targeted. It's relatively inexpensive. You can do paid media there too, but you can also do a lot of earned media, meaning you put content there that's shareable to people engage with. They'll do your work for you. And then last is paid media, which is where you purchase like banner ads or you purchase Facebook ads on social media as well. And that's more expensive, obviously comes with a bigger cost.
Man, I love all of that, Brett. Hey, everyone, church leaders, church planters. If you have a building, a physical presence, go buy Sherwin Williams paint to upgrade and bless Brett and his team. They're a great partner, and I've loved because Brett, I know as you've invested with Stadia, even financially, Sherwin Williams has matched your investments, which we so appreciate, and lots of companies do that. Brett, thank you for your time. Love you as a brother in Christ and as a friend, and for being bold enough to say, hey, we need to be thinking about these things.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greg. Love you too. This was a pleasure.